Thank you all for joining. We're really honored and blessed and incredibly happy and excited that May is joining us today for this seventh Mazoom session. Again, the purpose of these sessions were initiated during this COVID lockdown to bring some awareness about Lebanon, bring some awareness about AUB, but also provide some interesting topics, get the discussion going between the alumni, the supporters, and friends. AUB Lebanon is in great need of your help and support. And we, as an alumni here, we're actively working towards that initiative and helping Lebanon and the people of Lebanon, but specifically AUB, the only beacon, one of the few beacons of democracy that sheds light, that freedom of expression, that empowers people, empowers women, empowers the youth to get an education and keep our beloved country alive, but also participate in the human experience and be very successful people outside of the Lebanon, among the diaspora. I mean, Lebanese are among the most successful diaspora. A lot of it is contributed to their energy, enthusiasm, but some of it also because of their education, and part of it is because of AUB. Again, I'm blessed to have May today. For those of you who don't know May Rihani, May is an author. She's a poet. She's a woman activist. She's a woman leader. She served as the co-chair of the United Nations Girls Education Initiative called UNGE, if I'm pronouncing it right, between 2008 and 2010. She wrote a book, Keeping the Promise, which is a framework for advancing girls' education that is used in global organizations. Her knowledge on the subject is drawn from her many years of experience in designing and implementing similar programs in more than 40 countries across the world, especially in developing nations in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. May has also been a consultant and supported USAID agencies, UNICEF, World Bank, GE, ExxonMobil, and in 2016, she got appointed as the chair and director of the Khalil Gibran Chair for Values and Peace at the College of Behavioral and Social Sciences right here at the University of Maryland in the Washington, D.C. area. She has written and edited 8 books in English. 3 volumes of them are of Arabic poetry. May also sits on she's a board member of the Mothers to Mothers, which is based in Cape Town, the Renee Mawad Foundation, which is very active here in the DC area, Girls Rising and Al-Warif, and she received many awards and honors that I cannot just mention. It will take us some time, but the most recent was from the Arab American Anti-Discriminatory Committee, which was the ADC Women's Empowerment Forum Leadership Award in 2015. There is a lot of women inside of May. There is a lot of women empowerment inside of May that she would like to share with us. And without any further delay, May, the floor is yours. Just for our friends, supporters, alumni who are attending this presentation, please, if you have any question for May at any time, type it in, and I will be interrupting May every now and then to ask her question during her presentation. May, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Moustapha, for this very generous introduction. You're a friend, and as we say in Lebanese, in Arabic, شهدتك مجروحة.
لا أبداً أبداً. هي الحقيقة.
Today, I would like to speak to the audience about a topic that I believe is quite important and quite relevant, and that is women leaders in the time of Corona. But before I begin talking about this topic, I want to tell you why I chose the topic. In the past 4 years, I've been teaching at the University of Maryland a course on gender equity. but also through the University of Maryland and through a program about women's empowerment, I taught leadership in Jordan and in Morocco. So given that I taught both gender equality and equity and leadership, I was very curious to see how women leaders are doing during this time of coronavirus. So I decided to study the topic. And when Moustapha asked me to speak for the AUB audience in the Greater Washington, DC area, we discussed together this topic, and Moustapha and I thought this would be very relevant. I'd like to tell you from the beginning that towards maybe 3/4 of the discussion, I will link this topic to Lebanon. And we'll discuss it in particular from the lens, from a Lebanese lens. So, okay, I might ask Justin to move the slide, or I might.
Maybe you need to click on the screen. I think that's it.
On the screen itself, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I think
okay.
it moves.
Yeah,
there you go. That's it. That's it.
And I'm going to move this one so I can see. So I will discuss with you the success of women leaders in these challenging times. To be able to do that, I decided that I will start with some statistics. The latest statistics, meaning 2020 statistics, tell us that 8% of the heads of state and the heads of government in the world are women, meaning presidents and prime ministers. This, of course, means that from all the countries of the world, 92% of the countries are led by men and 8% are led by women. It seems from the research that I've done and from the articles that I've read and from the qualitative and quantitative information that I've been looking at, that women seem to be particularly successful in these difficult times fighting the virus. Now, I'd like you to know immediately that all the statistics that I'll be presenting to you in this presentation are from either Worldometers or from Johns Hopkins University or from one of the UN agencies, the United Nations agencies. We want to look at the reasons why countries by women are more successful. I'd like us to look at that. And one major reason is that women leaders, those 8% that we talked about, the women leaders, accept more readily that a crisis of the magnitude of the importance of COVID-19 needs a team of experts. They recognize they cannot rely only on themselves. They immediately accept that they need a team of experts. And they tend to listen better to public health experts and to scientists. Another reason is that after listening, and I think that second reason is key, absolutely key. After listening to the experts, to the scientists, to the public health experts, they do not shy away from immediately, decisively taking strategic actions. The key here is that they move quickly. They do not hesitate. They listen to the experts. And I'm going to use the word active listening, and we'll come back to it later. But once they do that, they move quickly. They make decisions. Women leaders recognize that the strength of a leader in a time of crisis can come from acknowledging that the leader needs those other experts, as I mentioned earlier. It really takes a unique style to accept always to listen to others, to accept that they alone cannot make all the decisions, to accept that they need experts in different fields. It takes a unique style of confidence to allow them to lead in this manner. A style of leadership that is at the same time assertive and vulnerable. These two words don't go together. Usually people who are assertive are not vulnerable. But this style of leadership recognizes that they need both, being assertive and being vulnerable. That they need at the same time to be both tough and compassionate. Many leaders think that they have to be tough, strong. They believe in strength, in toughness, but they have to also be compassionate, loving. They need empathy. They need to be able to put themselves in the shoes of others. So that's what these women leaderships have been doing. And that is one of the reasons, or many reasons, why they have been successful. This style of leadership, and I want to emphasize that, I need you to understand me about that point. This type of leadership is not at all unique to women. Many men practice this type of leadership. And if you ask me questions, I'll give you examples of men who are leaders now, today, during the COVID-19 times, and who practice that. But what I'm saying here is percentage-wise, there is a higher percentage of women leaders who practice that type of leadership than men leaders. From those 8% that I talked about at the beginning, and the 92% that I talked about at the beginning, women and men, there is a higher percentage of women who practice this type of leadership. That's the point I'm trying to make. To be able to prove it to you, even though I gave you the reasons why they are successful, I want to prove it to you. And to be able to do that, I'm going to compare countries that are led by women to those that are led by men. I want to look at facts. I don't want to look just at ideas and thoughts and maybe analysis, qualitative analysis. I want to look at the quantitative. Numbers never lie. Numbers are factual. They're evidence-based. So I'm going to look at countries led by women and those led by men. And that will allow us to examine the statement that says countries led by women seem particularly successful during this time. I want to compare countries that have at least some similarities. They're not going to be 100% similar. No two countries are 100% similar. The reality tells us that you will not find that, but some similarities. I want some geographical similarities, some cultural similarities, and to a certain extent within similar range when it comes to populations. So I will start by comparing 5 European countries. Germany, led by Angela Merkel, the Chancellor, and UK, France, Italy, and Spain, all 4 of them led by men. So 1 country led by a woman, 4 countries led by men, all European, all close to each other. Some share borders with each other. And they have populations that range between, the smallest country is Spain in terms of population, 46 million plus. The largest country is Germany, 83 million plus, and the UK is 67 million plus, sorry. France is 65 million plus, and Italy is 60 million plus. So somehow they're kind of close in population. I also want to do additional comparisons, and I will be comparing Sweden, another 5 European countries, but this time Scandinavian European countries, Sweden led by a man, to 4 other Scandinavian countries led by women, Norway, Finland, Iceland, and Denmark. So this time we're going to look at 4 countries led by 4 women and 1 country by a man, the opposite of what we will be looking at earlier. And then I want to get outside Europe. So nobody can tell me this is only a European phenomena. It's not. And I'm going to compare 4 countries outside Europe, 2 countries led by women, New Zealand and Taiwan. So you have Asia and you have the Australian geographic region of our planet. And 2 countries led by men, also from outside Europe, the United States and Brazil, North America and South America. In this way, we would have covered nearly all the regions of the world, not absolutely all, but a big chunk of them. So here we go. These are the 5 Europeans, the non-Scandinavian, that are the continental Europe, Germany, UK, Spain, Italy, and France. I'm going to give you 2 sets of quantitative information And the first set is on your left-hand side. The second set is on your right-hand side. The right-hand side is the most important, but before I reach to the right-hand side, let me say why I gave you the set on the left-hand side. It's the testing per million. By the way, I'll never give you absolute numbers because in comparisons, they mean nothing, absolutely nothing. You have to compare apples to apples. So you compare per million. So the importance of the set of figures on the left-hand side is if they started early. When they start late, the impact of testing is by far lesser. It doesn't lose all of its impact, not at all, but it loses a dimension of impact, which is how early they started, especially when we're talking about pandemics. So that's why I gave you that number. So you can go back to it when Moustapha decides to share this presentation with everybody. You can go back to these numbers. By the way, I need to let you know, I told you the sources of the numbers. I need to let you know that I updated all my numbers as of yesterday. So these numbers are updated yesterday. We're July 2nd. I looked at all the data July 1st. So you would know the date and the source of the data. Okay, if you look at the deaths per million, this is where the amazing results are. Germany, as of yesterday, has 108 number of deaths per million. The UK, 647, Spain, 606, Italy, 575, and France, 457. So the UK is 6 times more in terms of number of deaths than Germany. Spain, nearly 6.5 times more, the UK. Spain, 6 times more than the number of deaths of Germany. Italy, 500, nearly 3/4 more than the number of deaths in Germany. In France, 400.5 more than the number of deaths in Germany. Nobody can tell me, but because they're smaller or bigger, doesn't make sense. If you look at it this way, the biggest country has a smaller number of deaths per million. 4 are led by men, 1 is led by a woman. Let me move. I'll talk about these numbers and about the type of leadership in a qualitative way, analysis way, a bit later. I started with some analysis when I talked about the type of leadership, but then I wanted quickly to give you some quantitative numbers so you can look at data. This is data-driven. This is evidence-driven, evidence-based and data-driven. So now I'm going to look at another set of countries, 5 of them again, but Scandinavian this time. Sweden is led by a man. Norway, Finland, Iceland, and Denmark are led by women. And you will see here the number of deaths. The same applies what I said earlier to the testing. How early they started is the key. It doesn't mean it has to stop, but the key factor is how early they started. That's what influences a lot of factors, including number of deaths. Now, and of course, the amount of testing influences that too. But I wanted to highlight the early part, the early start part. Sweden has 528 number of deaths per million. Again, we compare countries per million. Norway, 46. Look at the difference. Finland, 59. Iceland, 29. Denmark, 105. 4 countries led by women. They have by far smaller number of deaths per million than their neighbor. Sweden and Norway are neighbors who share a long border, a long border. Finland also shares a border with, these are the 3 countries, Scandinavian countries that share a border, and then Iceland and Denmark is very close to them. So look at the difference. Norway has 46, Sweden has 528, which means 10 times more. Finland maybe 10 times less. Norway, 10 times less. Finland maybe 9 times less. Iceland, 20 times more, or 40 if somebody does the calculation, you can do it. And Denmark, 5 times less, meaning they're doing much better if per million if you compare all of that. Again, it doesn't matter which is bigger, which is smaller. In the first set of countries that I gave you, Germany was the biggest in terms of population. In this set, Sweden is the biggest. See, Germany was the biggest in the first set, and it had the lowest number per million of deaths. Sweden is the biggest in this set, and it has the highest number per death, per million. Highest number of deaths per million. And again, look at Iceland and look at Norway. Look at this difference. Very similar countries geographically, culturally, economically, and look at the difference. The ones that are led by women have a smaller number of deaths. Now let's go outside Europe. Just again, not to allow anybody to tell me this is a European phenomenon. It is not. I could take any women of the 8% and show you their numbers. And I'd like you to do it. Go home and do your research. Let's look at New Zealand and Taiwan, both led by women. The US and Brazil, both led by men. Giving you the number of tests. And I know Taiwan has the lowest number of tests, and that's very interesting, but I'll tell you something about Taiwan a bit later. But look at the number of deaths. New Zealand, 4 per million. Taiwan, 0.3 per million. 0.3 per million. The USA, our own country, 394, very close to 400 per million. Brazil, 283. Again, what counts is the type of leadership that we talked about, strength and compassion, vulnerability and assertiveness. I'll talk more about the type of leadership. Again, I'm not saying there are no men who can't do that, and I'll give you examples of men once you ask me. But what I'm saying is this, yeah, these are the quantitative results. Nobody can argue with that. Nobody. Numbers do not lie. So what I'd like to do now, after I showed you a large number of countries with men and women leading them and the differences, I want to know, and we want to know together, why did the countries led by women do better? I'm going to give you specific examples. I'm going to now go back to the qualitative, to the analysis, and give you very specific examples. We looked at New Zealand, so let's see New Zealand. Jacinda Ardern, she's the Prime Minister. She took very early action, very, very early action. Was one of the fastest leaders in the world, one of the fastest leaders to move her country from the first case of COVID-19 to lockdown. She imposed total self-isolation when there were only 6 cases in New Zealand. 6, not 100, not 500, 6.
So May, what do you attribute that quick response? Because this is not the first time I hear it. There was a small state in India where there was 1 case, and the leader of that state, the governor for that state, is also a woman, and she decided to implement tests. What do you attribute that quick, decisive decision that women leaders are doing in situations like that?
There are several. Active listening is one of them. You're absolutely right, Moustapha. And I hope somebody at the end asks me, what is active listening? I'll talk more about it. Active listening is absolutely one of the reasons. Another reason is to listen to the scientist, to admit that the leader, the prime minister, the president, whoever that person is, who's leading a country cannot be an expert in all the fields, cannot be an expert in heart surgery and in engineering and in pandemics and in economics and in epidemiology. No way. It seems more women admit that, some men admit that. That's what I try to do. It's not only women who admit that. You have few men, and I'll give you examples, but I wanted to start with the women. But what is interesting is that the percentage of women who practice this type of leadership is much higher than the percentage of men who practice this type of leadership. This is about how we socialize our children, boys and girls. This is about schooling. This is about what the curriculum is teaching them. This is about how we bring them up at home. This is about what society does to us. This is about what media, what the ads do to the women. This is about many things. And it ends up being that the women leaders have a different style in general than men leaders, or only few men leaders have that style, which is based on recognizing you cannot know it all. There is no way. You're not an expert in all the fields. You listen to the experts. You do active listening to the experts. Once you listen to the expert, you make quick decisions. You move quickly, decisive decisions. And your style of leadership is based not just on strength, but compassion also. Is based on assertiveness and vulnerability also. Mm-hmm. So it's that combination of factors. That's what Jacinda Ardern did. And that's why she has that very low number of deaths. Listen to this one, Taiwan, very close to China. They could have been infected immediately. Oh. The president of Taiwan, she's a president, not a prime minister. Her name is Tsai Ing-wen. Upon the discovery of the first infected person in January, by the way, I should tell you something before that. They knew in Taiwan that there is COVID-19 in December. In December, Tsai Ing-wen, the president, made a decision to look at all those traveling from China to Taiwan and to let them go through tests. Wow. In December, the minute she heard about it, the vice president of Tsai Ing-wen, her vice president, is a man. He is an epidemiologist, happens to be. Mm-hmm. Her minister of health is a medical doctor who graduated from Johns Hopkins here in the US. Tsai Ing-wen, in December, not in January, I hope you're all listening carefully to what I'm saying, in December, created a committee, not in January, not in February, created a committee to address the issues of this COVID-19 that they heard it's happening in China. And one of the first policies she took is nobody arrives to the airport before being checked. And then in January, very early on in January, she closed the airport. She took quick decisions. She listened to her experts, to her vice president, to her minister of health, to the committee around her of experts, to the epidemiologist, to several people who were experts in this field. She undertook rigorous efforts to track down those infected and to do contact tracing. In January, many countries still don't have contact tracing up and going in many countries. In January, she had contact tracing for every patient. Every patient, they will do their contact tracing, his or her. Her efforts helped isolate the problem and contain the contagion before a mass community outbreak took place. She didn't have a mass community outbreak. She just didn't have it. She stopped it in its tracks. And that's why she has 0.3% death per million. 0.3 deaths per million. Tsai Ing-wen. She didn't make the decisions alone. She listened, active listening, to her vice president, to her minister of health, to many others who are the specialists and the experts. Sorry. Okay, Germany. Angela Merkel happens to be a scientist, not her vice chancellor, not her minister. She is a scientist by training. By the way, if you ask me what are her degrees, she studied physics for her BA/MA. And when she decided to do her PhD, she shifted into chemistry. So she's a physicist and a chemist, and her PhD is quantum chemistry. look who they have as their chancellor, a person with a PhD in quantum chemistry. So by training, she's a scientist. She embraced science. She listened to the scientists, not just herself. She's not an epidemiologist, so she would recognize that she doesn't know it all. And she was quick to take decisions, and she was quick to lock down the country, and she was very quick, very decisive to fast track broad samples of Germans to see the infections, and also broad samples for antibody testing. Again, quick decisions, not, and of course, after listening to the scientists and to the public health. Iceland, again, I'm giving you many countries because I don't want you to think these are the exceptions to the rule. They are not, and they all followed the same approach, these women, listening to others, to the scientists, to the public health experts, making quick decisions. Was one of the first countries, January 31st, I'm giving you dates everywhere, to launch an aggressive testing program. This aggressive testing program informed the world. Everybody in the world benefited from the decisions of the president of Iceland, benefited about the importance of the asymptomatic carriers. That's how, this is a novel virus. COVID-19 is novel, is new. That is how the world learned about asymptomatic carriers. It's because of Iceland, because the president of Iceland made quick decisions, didn't hesitate, didn't change her mind, didn't shift her positions from one position to another, didn't معمعت القصة, ما ضيعت حدا. So she made aggressive decisions, quick decisions, after she listened to the scientists and to the public health. Amongst them is a very aggressive testing program that led us to understand that there are asymptomatic carriers who will infect others. Now, I talked enough about COVID-19. I want to shift us to a topic that's fully related to what we're talking about, but a broader topic, in my mind, even a by far more important topic. I want to shift us to the topic of women leaderships in the world. And I want to talk about women leaders, not just as presidents and as prime ministers, but also within the cabinets and within the parliament. And I'm going to give you some information, and then I will comment on the information. There are governments in the world where more than 50%, and I'm highlighting in yellow, more than 50% of the cabinet, of the ministers in the cabinet are women. Not 50, 54, 55, 60, more than 50% are women. I'll give you the countries: Canada, Spain, France, Sweden, Albania, Nicaragua, Colombia, Costa Rica, Rwanda. Again, I'm trying to show you it's not only Europe. Canada is North America. Nicaragua, Colombia, Costa Rica is South America. Rwanda is Africa. So it's all over the planet. More than 50% are women. Now, I'm going to give you cabinets that are 40% to 50%. Finland, Norway, Iceland, Switzerland, El Salvador, Peru, Guinea-Bissau, South Africa, Ethiopia, and Haiti. Again, you will see you have European countries, you have Latin American countries, El Salvador, Benin, you have African countries, Guinea-Bissau, South Africa, Ethiopia, you have Central American countries, Haiti, and as I said, you have Latin American countries. These are governments who appoint ministers. Either 50% and above are women, or 40 to 50% are women. I'm going to look at parliaments. As of these, the first bullets, 2 bullets, are as of 2020. The parliaments, I have them as of 2019. 35 countries in the world have over 33% of the members of their parliaments as women. Over. That's the minimum that I'm giving you. Some, and I'll give you immediately one, just so you would know. Rwanda has 64% of the members of their parliaments as women. 64%. Bolivia has 53%. The minimum, I'm saying, is 33%. And I'm not going to count all the 35 countries. I'm not going to do that. It takes a lot of our time.
Is the US, do you remember if the US
no, the US is 19%.
Wow.
The US is not one of them. That's a very good question. And the US is 19%. We have 35 countries. If I go down to the 19%, you have maybe 75 countries.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so 35 countries who, as a minimum, have 33% and above. I gave a few examples of the above in the parliament, among them Finland, Norway, Sweden, New Zealand, France, Iceland, Denmark, Rwanda, Africa. Tunisia, an Arab country, has more than 33% of its parliament women. They voted women, more than 33%. Now, in these countries, that's my point. My point here is that in these countries, women's role in leadership is not a token. It's not a gesture. It's not a token. It doesn't count if it's a token. If you have 4 members of the cabinet or 6 members of parliament, if the parliament is 130 or 140, 6 members are 4% or 3%, whatever. So that doesn't count. This is tokenism. It doesn't count. It doesn't make a difference. It has to be a major and an integral part of the political system. And when I say the political system, I mean at the level of the president or prime minister, at that level, which is the executive level, that's where executive decisions are made, at the level of the cabinet, meaning at the level of the ministers. As you've seen, there are many countries that have over 50%, many countries that have over 40%, many countries that have over 33% at the level of the cabinet. I gave you some examples. And then also at the level of the legislative, meaning the parliament. It has to be at the 3 levels: the executive, the cabinet, and the parliament. The president, prime minister, that's the executive, the cabinet, and the parliament, the legislative. If it happens at the 3 level, then a lot of results will be different than when women are not sharing in leadership. And let me tell you what I mean the results will be different. In general, these countries show better results in several areas, and I'm going to give you the areas, and that is based on research. That's based on research done by universities in the world, qualitative and quantitative, based on research done by the UN system. So I'm giving you this based on research. More progress on issues such as education in particular, by the way, such as a more balanced labor participation, more balance, men and women, such as paid leave, such as laws addressing domestic violence, an extremely important issue that we tend to neglect, such as environmental issues, and of course, such as issues addressing health and pandemics. These are across the globe. When women participate at the 3 levels of the government, not 1 only, not 2, 3, and when at those 3 levels, at least 2 of them are more than 33%, and 1 of them, either the prime minister or the president, is a woman, then you get better results in these areas that I mentioned to you. I'm going to give you a very specific example. And this example is about education. My expertise, as I said, maybe, or as Moustapha really said, is education and then women's empowerment. So the Ministry of Education in Finland created a public education system, and I want to take a minute or half a minute to tell you why I look at the public education, not the private education, because the public education is by far more important. And why is it by far more important? Because it houses the largest number of children in the world. I'm talking here about primary and secondary. I'm talking the first 12 years, K to 12, the base of the pyramid, the foundation of education. That is the foundation of education, K to 12. So the Ministry of Education in Finland created a public education system. Let me tell you one more bit of information that is important. 75 to 80% of the children of the world, of the 200 plus countries of the world, go to public education, not to private. Okay, so those public education systems are extremely important in the world. So the Ministry of Education in Finland created a public education system that is considered the world gold standard. It outperforms the US, the UK, Russia, and 200, and I think we have 250 countries in the world, maybe 248 countries of the world, if not 49 all the time. And most importantly, in all academic areas, meaning math, science, social science, languages, history, and so on and so forth. And they have consistently, the Ministry of Education in Finland, their education system, their public education system, ranked among the top 3 countries worldwide. Most of the time, it ranked number 1. Once or twice, it ranked number 2, and once or twice, it ranked number 3 in the past 15 years. Most of the time, number 1. And that's according to the International Education Testing and Evaluation System, PISA, that all the ministries of education in the world acknowledge and that the UNESCO acknowledges. That's an example.
It's not surprising, but I think it's enlightening to see that the issues that you highlighted that are interesting to women leaders, and you don't see defense, for example.
No, you're not going to.
Which tells you they're less prone to resolving matters with probably violence and more interested in education, environment. Why is that? I mean, I understand probably women personality versus men personality, but there are politics in the middle. Are women less political? And Roger Hanouch asked one very direct. He said, are politician women less concerned with the reaction of the public and maybe with other politicians? Are they less political, more pragmatic? They just make these decisions and move forward?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think that's an excellent question. Women politicians use a style of leadership that's different. Some men use it, some men, again, I want to insist on that. And women politicians historically have given top priority to education and health and pandemics, but also to the labor force. That's the economy, by the way. The labor force is the economy, and to laws, and to violence, but less to defense. They give importance to everything else, but less defense, because there is a study, and there is a book, by the way, written by an Arab. His name is Dr. Brahim Sharqiyi, and he studied 3 countries in the Arab world, Libya, Yemen, and possibly Algeria. And he is a professor, by the way. He used to work with me. And in his book, he talks about that women tend to aim towards peace more than men. In his book, Brahim Sharqiyi is his name, Dr. Brahim Sharqiyi. There are many studies that show you that women are more collaborative. There is more collaboration. There are many studies that show you it's the style of leadership. And there are many studies that show you, and this is going to surprise you, that women, when they reach, in particular, the executive position, in particular, but also alone they can't do it. They have to have more women in the parliament and more women in the cabinet. They have to have that. They can't be alone at the top. It doesn't function. Benazir Bhutto could not change her country in Pakistan, could not. She was alone at the top. That doesn't work. You have to have enough women, minimum 33% in the 2 bodies that are the parliament and the government, and you have to have women at the absolute top executive, one of the 2 positions, the president or the prime minister, and then these things work. Then these things work because they're more collaborative, because they recognize that Their priorities are all of these issues and not defense, not war, because they listen to others, experts in their own fields. They recognize from minute one, they're not the expert in every field, because they are assertive and vulnerable. They are strong and compassionate. But the one thing that might surprise you, once they reach the top, they try to work for the whole population and not for a segment of the population. They stop being partisan.
Yeah, they have more empathy.
They have more empathy, more compassion.
But I know you're going to talk about Lebanon, and probably we're going to discuss the Arab world.
Move.
Yeah, because we have 10 minutes, because there are many questions coming, and I want to make sure we can tackle some of those before you leave us.
Let me move. Key concepts regarding leadership that countries and people are learning about now, and this is kind of new. As I told you, I taught leadership. I took courses at Harvard about leadership and at MIT about leadership, and I taught leadership and gender at the University of Maryland. So what we're learning is the type of leadership matters, the diversity within leadership matters. I can't underline enough the diversity within leadership matters. The style of leadership matters, collaboration we just mentioned. And then major concepts, if included in leadership, produce better results. And these major concepts are strength and compassion together. It's not an either or. It's not. If we think either or, we lose. It's both and. So it's strength and compassion. It's respect of the truth, facts, science, and transparency, but it has to be absolute respect of the truth, facts, science, and transparency. It's active listening, which leads to efficiency and decisiveness, and it's the capacity to delegate authority to experts.
That's key.
That's key. It's all of that, and it's all of that together. And these women that I gave you as examples, Jacinda in New Zealand, Angela Merkel in Germany, the president in Taiwan, the president in Iceland, and so on, they practice this type of leadership. And lately I read so many articles, around 15 or 16 articles about women leaders. They all come back to these issues, all of them.
Someone just mentioned Kay Moses, and I agree with him. I think Andrew Cuomo from New York, the governor of New York, he showed a lot of these attributes because he dealt with the issues.
When I said,
no, you did say some men.
Ask me, I'll give you the name, and the first name I was going to give you is Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York.
Yeah,
if you listen to Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York, he talks exactly about that. He talks about compassion. He used the word loving. I'll tell you his words. We have to be disciplined, smart, loving, and united. United is about compassion. He says there is no partisan when we have a pandemic. He says, I have to listen to the experts. I call the experts. I listen to the scientists. I listen to the epidemiologists. Exactly what I'm talking about. That's a man. I told you from the beginning, it's not just women. It's men and women, but the percentage of women is higher. That's all I'm talking about. Now, these major concepts, I would call them concepts of leadership of the 21st century. There is a concept has nothing to do with the 21st century. We always studied it in the 20th century, but I'm afraid we take it for granted. Vision and mission is about serving all the people and not a fraction of the people. We should never take it for granted. In times of crisis, any type of crisis, there is no room for partisanship. Okay, how does this relate to Lebanon? We come to Lebanon now. Many countries in the globe are going through reforms. Their people are demanding structural change with the hope that the reform might lead to transformation. The key word here is transformation. Many countries learned and are learning now are learning many lessons as a result of pandemics. Pandemics teach us a lot, by the way, or injustices, or autocratic governance, or serious systemic corruption and human rights violations. Many countries are recognizing more than ever before that leadership, the type of leadership they elect, makes a huge difference in the change they seek to realize. We cannot elect leaders who do not follow the types of leadership that I talked about, the concepts that I talk about, and expect reform. We just can't. Where are we in Lebanon? Lebanon, as you all know, is going through an existential crisis, perhaps the most important existential crisis, the greatest, since the declaration of the Grand Lebanon, Lebanon al-Kabir, in 1920, 100 years ago. We all know the reasons for the existential crisis. It is what's happening in Lebanon is really a perfect storm. We have systemic corruption. We have an armed party that happens to be more powerful than the government. We have geopolitical interests. We have very real threat of financial collapse. I'm afraid to say total collapse. We have COVID-19, and we have, I want to stop at the last point, manipulative sectarianism. And on purpose, I called it manipulative. I didn't call it sectarianism, because during the revolution that started in October 2019, the people of Lebanon proved that sectarianism is an old concept that they wanted to throw away out of the window, but some politicians in Lebanon manipulate this sectarianism.
Yeah.
Is there hope for the transformation in Lebanon, for transformational change in Lebanon? And what does it mean? We, the Lebanese, we have to reimagine, recreate, and redesign a new government system. To start with, we have to be able to be hopeful. It's not easy. We have to be able to be positive. It is not easy with what's happening in Lebanon. And if we are hopeful and positive, we have to be able to reimagine, recreate, and redesign a new government system. We need to prepare for it, because once the moment comes, we need to seize the moment. We cannot then at that time start preparing and start thinking, what do we do? We need to seize the moment when that moment comes and be ready to help transform Lebanon. The new system cannot answer the needs of a 21st century Lebanon without a leadership that is based on the qualities we spoke about earlier. For a new redesigned system to be a just and responsive system, gender equality has to be a cornerstone. It also has to be a thread that cuts across all the other component systems. For gender equality to be a cornerstone, it has to be an essential ingredient. It can't be tokenism. And it has to be part of the equation. And it has to be part of the necessary conditions.
So how do you do that, May? Do we need to impose a woman quota?
I'm going to answer your question. It's an excellent one, Moustapha, but allow me just to say a few more things, and then I will answer the quota question,
sure,
which is absolutely important. I said there are some necessary conditions. Without them, it cannot work. A major condition for transformational change is that the transformational change has to happen, number one, in the political system, but also in the education system, the health system, the economy, the banking, the legal system, and gender and other equalities have to be part of all of these systems. What are the other necessary conditions? A recognition of the different types of leadership. We can't go back to leadership that does not listen to anybody, that is not collaborative, that is there only for part of the population, but not the full population. An awareness at the people's level, based on facts, data, knowledge, and evidence. A demand, the people have to demand a leadership based on strength and compassion. We can't talk about, there is a minister in Lebanon who said, I killed 2 people. Where is compassion? Based on a vision that is committed to all the people and not to a few at the top. A leadership that respects the truth, facts, science, and that's willing to act decisively. We cannot take, how many months did we take to elect a president? A year and a half? I don't know.
About that.
Yeah, about that. How many months to come up with a cabinet? We have to be decisive, quick, a leadership that's not driven by partisanship. هودي جماعتي، هودي الناس تبعي، هيدا حزبي، هودي مدري مين، هول معهم سلاح معي. A leadership that is not driven by partisanship, but driven by what is just and fair for all the people. A continuous use of metrics, evaluations, when we compare the results of the different types of leadership, internal and external. Okay, I'm proposing, and this is where I will answer your question, Moustapha, I didn't forget it, but I'm proposing that Lebanon may have a chance, and I'm choosing my words very carefully, may have a chance beginning to solve its structural ingrained problems if the Lebanese population, the people, decide to elect women leaders for 33% minimum, I would say at least 33% at the decision-making positions in the political sector and in the majority of other sectors, but let's look at the political sector, meaning the parliament and the cabinet, and hopefully one of the two positions at the top. 33%, and that will come to your question, of the decision-making position is in the political sector held by women is not a silver bullet. However, it is a strategy that have a high chance of changing and possibly solving many of the structural changes in problems in Lebanon. Why the 33%? Because it's the tipping point. The tipping point is the point at which a series of changes within any system, political, economic, educational, health system, a series of changes that are significant will happen, and it will change the whole system. That's based on research. Without the 33%, women cannot do it. Nobody can do it. You need 33% of that type of leaders. Women have that type of leaders. So if we elect 33% in the parliament, if we have 33 in the cabinet, minimum, I showed you other countries that have 40 or 50%, even more than 50%, but I showed you all of that. Then we can change. You asked me a question. What about the quota? Do I accept the idea of the quota?
So May,
yes.
Before you go to that question, and I think my question will be a follow-up. So Marwan Leilat is asking, he's saying, what would be the approach to empower women and allow them to get to the government? Would be a top-down solution or a bottom-up solution?
It's a bottom-up solution. It's a bottom-up solution.
And the quota will be part of that.
Yes, question, and the quota, that's where I'm reaching. It's really a bottom-up solution with a quota. But let me talk a little bit more about the quota. And Dr. Hanan Darhour from Morocco made a superb study about the quota. And there is another woman in Tunisia that made a superb study about the quota. But I'm remembering now Hanan Darhour because I know her personally very well. And I listened to her presentation about the quota. And many agree with that. Many researchers, academicians, agree with that the quota is a solution. However, it has a condition. And the condition, the quota should not be a law, should not be legislated forever, because it has to be only for a certain number of years, let's say 10 or 12 or 15 years maximum. And after that, we don't want the quota, because you don't want women to be second-class citizens. And the quota is creating a special situation for women. We will accept it only if it has a limitation in time, and only if it's there to catch up, to reach the 33%, and to allow the population to become more aware of the importance of the 33%, the tipping point, and more, and the type of leadership. So
and we'll give them a chance to make changes to the educational system and retrain a new generation on women's rights, etc., etc.
Yes, absolutely, Moustapha. What you said is part of why we need the quota, but not forever. Forever, it backfires. But for a certain period of time, and it depends on each country how long the period, some said 10, some did 12, some did 14. The maximum that I know is 17, but each country can decide how long it wants the quota. But yes, the quota is part of the solution. Okay. I want to give you a final thought, and then I'll open it up for more questions. But my final thought is from Michelle Bachelet. Michelle Bachelet was the president of Chile twice, from 2006 to 2010, and again from 2014 to 2018. She is presently, today, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, elected in 2018. She still carries in that position. Michelle Bachelet wrote, "One woman in politics changes the women, but many women in politics change politics." And I would say the many women, minimum 33% of women in politics change politics.
I think this is a very powerful statement. It's true that, I mean, we have an example of Pakistan, Benazir Bhutto. We have the example of Bangladesh, where you have leader women, but when they don't have the support, they weren't able to do a lot for these nations, right?
Absolutely true. But I gave you nations where you have the 33%, and I gave them to you from different continents. Europe has a lot of that. Canada has that, that's North America. Rwanda has that, that is Africa. Bolivia has that, that is Latin America. So many nations in the 21st century. We're no more the 19th. We're no more even the 20th century. We are in the 21st century. We need to continue progressing, moving forward, looking forward. Many countries have that at the 3 levels. At least 35 countries have it at the 3 levels. Why not us? Why can't we do it? Once we start that change, transformational change will happen in Lebanon.
Yeah, I think education is key. لأنه part of the risk with the quota is العشائرية, tribalism, where they will promote women that belong to one political movement versus another. And but I agree. I think you need a time limit. You need to allow them to change the education system as long as there is an independence in the choice, etc.
Yes.
What is your if you want to rate the performance of women politician in Lebanon in second half of the 20th century? I mean, we had some names that were vocal. Some of them were part of the government. We still don't have big representation, right? About, I think, 40% of the Lebanese who wanted to get elected were, I think, in the last election were women, but we only elected what? 6%?
No, 6 of the whole parliament, which is
of 125, yeah,
which is 4%. We elected 4%, even though we had 30% in terms of the number of candidates running. We did not elect. That's the problem. We need this awareness that I'm talking about at the people's level. I think after the revolution, after October 2019, we have more awareness about the need to have new leadership, independent leadership, not عشائري leadership, not atbea, independent leadership that follows these concepts that I talked about, the concepts of compassion and toughness, the concepts of decisiveness, the concepts of active listening, that follows these concepts and make decisions, respect for science, respect for the truth, respect for facts, not the machoism that we see. الذكورية هيدي ما رح تنفع حدا ولا رجال ولا النساء، ما بتنفع، بتضر. الذكورية بتضر الرجال والنساء. So we need to look at these concepts that I really outlined in this presentation and elect more women. And that's why I am totally for hopefully elections soon, because I think there is more awareness in Lebanon, and elect more women and some men who follow this approach of leadership.
And Marwan is also asking about social barriers. Your thoughts on what social barriers do you need to overcome in specifically in Lebanon, or maybe if you spill over to the region where we're in? Any
Arab world. The Arab world. Yes, I will answer that. Sure. This is, again, a very key question. But let me give us a little bit of hope, and then I'll answer it. Tunisia is an Arab country and was able to reach the 33%. And it was the first Arab country that was able to do that, which is superb, That gives hope. There are 3 other countries that are on that track, following these concepts that I'm talking about. And these are Jordan, the Arab Emirates, and Morocco. And I am optimistic about these 3 countries being able to reach the 33% in the near future, not in the so far future, but sometime in the near future. Lebanon can reach that. We need more awareness about the importance of the key concepts of leadership, but also the importance of diversity in leadership, gender balance in leadership, and the importance of the type of leadership, not the authoritarian that imposes on Lebanon and on the Lebanese people whatever it wants, but the leadership that is for all the people, but not a part of the people, a section of the people. You know, all of these concepts that I call 21st century concepts of leadership, the active listening concept. Then if the people becomes more aware, then we can elect more women and more men that follow that type of leadership. If Tunisia was able to do it, if Morocco and Jordan and the Emirates are on the track, why not us? Why not? We have an educated population. Look what we do when we go outside Lebanon. Look how successful we are when we are outside Lebanon. I think if we elect 33% minimum of women in the parliament and in the cabinet, Lebanon will be transformed. I am convinced of that. Research is convinced of that. Statistics are convinced of that. That is one of the ways of changing Lebanon.
May, this is very inspiring. I think we learned a lot today from you about women in leadership role and the concept of the tipping point, which is totally new to me. And I think it is new to a lot of the audience, and it's based on quantitative analysis. I think empowering women in the Arab world, empowering women in Lebanon would definitely have a significant impact on the future of the country, because of the fact that they are active listeners, they have empathy, they're compassionate, their priorities are different than men. They care about education, they care about the environment, they care about what really matters for life and social justice and a balanced society. I thank you a lot. I think we've been incredibly informed today. I hope that people listen back home, and if they don't, we need to work really hard here in the diaspora to make some influence and help shape the future of our country. Our means are limited, but we will do what we can. And this is one of the platforms and the tools we're trying to do, educate as many as we can on things that we can do back home. Thank you all. Thank you all the AUBites, all the friends, the family, everybody who supported and was listening today to the talk. God bless you all. God bless Lebanon. God bless AUB. God bless America. May, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, Moustapha. Thank you for organizing these extremely important sessions in the name of AUB, a university that enlightened us and empowered us. Thank you for all the listeners and for all those who asked questions. Thank you all.